Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 25th. Pretty much in line with our expectation as the DOC here with the steel rising above the negative 13.5 caused enough to give support to the S&P. And in fact, that allowed it to continue to push. Interestingly enough, though, unable to get back across the MBI white, but with such tiny, almost non-existent short activity. This is just a bull case, whether or not there's just enough funds to keep pushing things. Otherwise, we just kind of language across. When we look at the NASDAQ, though, considerably weaker, and it has been in that significant crossover. Once it dipped below that 25, it makes it much more difficult to support right along there. So the S&P holding up was enough to keep that 76 alive, but it did fill back in the positive extreme for the NASDAQ. So that completed that maneuver there. And you can see even from an extreme standpoint, no dips below the red line. In fact, we had the brief dip into the green area, which if we had a little bit more of that, we would have expected much stronger turnaround, but with the shakeout going the opposite direction until that turns around. Could expect more of the same. Treasuries, of course, getting weaker, and in the sense that yield going back up because as we look at oil and that continuing to rise, and that's a problem. That's going to upend a lot of the easing projection ideas, and that's why you see treasuries for the yield going back up, because breaking up towards this 80 zone, and then you worry about whether or not that's just going to continue to accelerate. Becomes very problematic, and unless you see a significant slowdown within the U.S. and that's just inflationary pressure, and of course that reality sinking into the euro for any of those who thought that somehow the eurozone was going to be able to do something significant. No, no, and it just filled back in the whole positive extreme run that began. We got a little bit further to go, but it was a nonsense move in the first place. But that's what you can do when you force people into one position, and they were forced to cover all those short positions, and it drove that pretty quickly, and then just faded off with nothing. And gold lagging still a little bit, but I think if oil stays where it is, you're going to see a nice bounce back from gold from that standpoint. We're not seeing much of anything from crypto. Got pretty close to that entire fill. There was just the original breakout bar that's left, but that fills it all back into the primary one. No shock that it was just a matter of all that news getting worked out, and then the reality is, what's the next impetus for things to move? And we can see that we've been having considerable weakness from a ETH relative to Bitcoin, and that's simply because of the news related to what Bitcoin was about to do. From 50K, you can see that we pulled back from there. Now we've got this next peak. Becomes a problem if it's not able to take out the previous highs. So that's going to be the focus, I think, and we'll be watching for that MBI white, because a spike up there would indicate that that is going to be a lower high. However, we're still in rising shakeout at the moment. Yellow, not quite red positive extremes, but a warning sign that maybe bulls are getting a little exhausted within all of this. And we can see from a post-market situation, this is where we are in the current post-market, shot up, but filled all that back in, all those positive extremes getting taken out, which is pretty clean action from that standpoint. If we scroll back to intraday, you can see the market opened up, and they basically just sold off into all of that action and filled back the little positive extreme breakout, but it fought its way right back up to it, and they just filled it right back in. So it was pretty non-eventful day. Still ended up net positive from a close standpoint, but you can see the back and forth now is starting to be a little more difficult from a bull side, because you just don't have enough juice to keep pushing things at this particular stage. And barring some kind of specialized news, the risk is more to the downside, simply because negative factors will certainly weigh heavier given where we're at pricing wise at 45.86. It's up there. So as always, though, I will continue to update you on anything relevant. Trade well. Talk to you later.